Well, the business world turns and companies seek a guiding light for all their children. We have more news about the Chinese Room and Bloodlines 2, the current developers of Bloodlines 2. So what's this drama about? The Chinese Room is hailing their independence from Sumo Group. Here's some brief context. Back in 2007, modders Dan Pinchbeck and Jessica Curry started a company called the Chinese Room. Half-Life, by the way, was the game of choice that they modded. They had some modest success with a few games, but in 2018, they were on hard times. They let all the staff go except for Pinchbeck and Curry, and were on the verge of collapse when they were bought by Sumo Group. Sumo Group paid £2.2 million for the company, with $600,000 of that 2.2 being net considerations, which is essentially in business terms the purchase price of the company. The other 1.6 was to expand the company, staff up, etc. And as business often happens, in 2022, Tencent, the Chinese-owned corporation, bought up Sumo Group. And it was this investment that allowed them to make Still Wakes the Deep, a game that was released to decent reviews and reception in June of 2024. And with the backing of Tencent and Sumo Group, the Chinese Room ended up with the contract to do Bloodlines 2, because their owners wanted a high-profile, profitable game. Not that you can blame them. Thing is, that's not the bailiwick of the people who started the Chinese Room. Dan Pinchbeck, by the way, left the company in June of 2023. Curry is still there, and even after this new move, she will still continue her role at the Chinese Room. So what's all this about them buying their independence? Well, as we know, they did a bunch of layoffs back in June, saying that the core work on Bloodlines was done, and that they were scaling back and just doing QA. As it turns out, Sumo Group apparently realized that trying to do a AA or even simulated AAA game is stupid expensive and the timelines suck. Instead, they've decided to focus on contract work. Developers for hire that go in and do certain projects. Those projects will have timelines and budgets, and is a lot easier to understand the fixed costs and get yourself a guaranteed revenue stream. After all, you gotta keep the lights on. But if you're creative, that might not do it for you, especially the kind of games that the Chinese Room is known for. So, when they had to go from over 100 employees, or even more, the numbers are not specific, down to 83, the Chinese Room was looking for some alternatives. And as it would seem, Tencent and Sumo Group were not opposed to this. So the Chinese Room managed to get an investment from Hiro Capital, that's Hiro, for an undisclosed sum that bought them out of their Sumo contract. It's unfortunate another round of layoffs happened, and the Chinese Room is down to 55 employees. It is funny how all of the headlines say the Chinese Room has purchased their independence. But if you take a look at how Hiro Capital manages their investments, they are very hands-on, and they flat out say that if you're looking for a silent partner just to hand you a heap of cash, they are not the folks you're looking for. Still, this does bring the ownership back to the Chinese Room, which is a British company, and Hiro Capital is also British and Luxembourg-based firm. In the Chinese Room's announcement, they say that they are working on 2 new IPs, and in an interview in GameIndustry.biz, studio head Ed Daly said they were going to focus on the types of games that the Chinese Room is known for and wants to make. They don't want to be a studio for hire, and it's pretty clear they do not want to be a AAA action RPG developer. And there's not a thing wrong with that. If something trips your trigger, then that's what you should pursue, because that's what you're going to do the best at. And I mentioned every time they did an interview on Bloodlines 2 that they did not seem to be excited about that game. Maybe they were, and they were just horrible at showing it, but they just seemed so dead inside when they talked about it. Because they're vampires, maybe. But if you watched interviews about Still Wakes the Deep, they were really pumped about that game. From an outsider's perspective, it really looked like they ended up with that Bloodlines 2 contract not because they wanted it, but maybe because they needed it, and Tencent said, this is what you're going to do. Now, what the heck does all this mean for Bloodlines 2? First, we know that White Wolf, the new publishing and dev arm for World of Darkness, intends to do all game dev in-house. And since the development of Bloodlines 2 is within Unreal 5, that is an engine that they will be able to find people who know an awful lot about. Yes, there will be very special code that was written in that engine for what Bloodlines 2 is going to do, but it wasn't an in-house developed engine. And no doubt the Chinese Room has certain contractual obligations to provide provide support after launch. What those contractual obligations are, we don't know. The Chinese room did specifically call out Bloodlines 2 as a game that they were finishing, that they were polishing, that they were committed to delivering. In the end, this is probably very good for Bloodlines 2 and any future Bloodlines IPs. So here's to wishing the Chinese room all the best. It's always nice to have independence, even if it isn't 100%, because you do have investor oversight, and hopefully this means really good things for new Bloodlines properties. And Game Informer's announced that their latest issue will feature as their cover Bloodlines 2. So we'll have to check that out and see what gnarly info we get out of that one. What's your opinion in all of this? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, you like this kind of content? Give us a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.